widely. Great stuff. So I'm going to put up our slide deck for this evening. As I mentioned, probably the worst slide deck I've ever made in terms of its physical presentation, but the content hopefully is a little bit better. So really excited to be here, as I mentioned, to bring you today's important announcements around our Campout event. It's been long in the works and really excited based on what we achieved last year, building on what we achieved last year to bring you an even bigger, bolder experience this year. So a huge welcome from Pete and I. Pete, before we start, do you just want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you've been working on with the Campfire Network, and you'll have the opportunity to share about the history of Campout during the presentation. But if you'd just like to just tell us a little bit about what you've been working on more broadly, that'd be a great place to start.
Yeah, I suppose the inspiration for the social network, which is Campfire Convention, came about after 15 years of doing a festival called The Big Chill, which grew from 150 in the back room of the Union Chapel in North London through to 30,000 at Eastnor Castle in the Malvern Hills. And the great thing I took from those years in The Big Chill was this inspiration around bringing community together. It was far more than just doing a festival in a field once a year. We had a thriving online community, so that was very much part of what I wanted to do with Campfire as well. But to give it a bit more sense of purpose, I was detecting a bit of a shift from the sort of hedonistic vibe, albeit a chilled hedonistic vibe that The Big Chill had, into a thirst, a hunger to change things, whether that was personal change or societal change. And the time just felt right for Campfire, and the symbolism around the campfire was a great leveler, coming together around the campfire and doing business or discussing ideas or just connecting with other people. So it was all about the connections. So music was still a key part of Campfire. We wanted to do the events and the online in parallel. So we did the first Campfire in 2016, which I can talk about later, but that was the inspiration in terms of bringing people together.
Thank you, Pete. Yeah, and my name's Astin-Gregory. For those of you who don't know me, I've been broadcasting for the last few years on primarily the issues that have spun out from the response to the global pandemic. Under the Pandemic podcast, we launched the Elevate community in 2021 to start to really think about solutions to some of the cultural, social fragilities that had emerged during that time, and also some of the systemic change that the systemic issues that I suppose were brought to the surface over the last few years. But we're not here to talk about the origin story of Elevate today. We're here to talk about Campout 2023. So warm welcome to everyone who's joining us tonight from the Elevate and Campfire communities and wider afield. We are here to talk about the lineup. That's our kind of big tease for tonight. We've got a very exciting series of announcements around the lineup. But tonight we're going to talk about why Campout is important this year in particular. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of the event, the ethos and the principles, what to expect at this year's Campout in terms of what we've got on offer, plus, of course, keeping you engaged hopefully all the way through to when we announce the details of the specific details of our full lineup. So looking forward to going through this with you. So why are we here? Well, in the aftermath of the pandemic, we're dealing with the trail of collateral damage that's occurred over the last few years, from record hospital waiting lists to financial collapse, mental health epidemics, and much, much more, and grappling with that aftermath, and many people who are divided over the last few years, and the loss of trust in institutions and individuals and governments. We're wrestling with all of that alongside the emergent cost of living crisis, increasing poverty, the mental health crisis, which was already visible prior to the pandemic, but now has become visceral. The division, polarization, and culture wars, not only playing out on social media, but actually in the real world. We've seen the war on free speech and censorship playing out, and kind of this post-truth reality emerging with grand narratives and lots of pressures on free speech. We've seen the rise of a totalitarian kind of technocratic culture within international governance. We've seen a continued rise of lack of government transparency and accountability. widening inequalities, greater discrimination, ecological breakdown, pollution and destruction of nature, outdated education systems. And that's the starting. That's the starter for 10. But we're not here to depress you tonight. We're here to say that we're grappling with some really key issues. And what's interesting about our event site, Braziers Park in South Oxfordshire, is when it became an intentional community in the 60s, they invited people from across the world to come and discuss the kind of world issues that were playing out during that time, to try and explore and understand how communities could play a role in changing the future. And fascinating to hear that story as we prepare for our event at Braziers Park, almost with the exact same intention. Now, this is a quote that I've shared regularly over the last few years, but the repressive and authoritarian power structures are adverse to the goals of freedom, peace, and prosperity. When it becomes necessary for the people to cease obeying obsolete social patterns which have isolated humankind from each other, we need to build a new free society in the shell of the old. Now, this isn't my quote. It's actually a quote from the 1960s, and there are many parallels in this unique time with some of the issues that are playing out in the current realm, but also harking back to some similar issues over the last few decades. Now, the counterculture revolution of the 1960s led to the Summer of Love, which encouraged people to question authority. And I think certainly right now people are once again questioning authority. And the key focus during that time was of personal empowerment, community building, decentralization and localization, higher consciousness and natural living. And it's no surprise that those 5 themes are core themes for us this year at Campout, really looking at how we can, in the world of centralized authority, how we can bring the kind of inner power back to ourselves and to our communities, and looking at how we can decentralize and localize those power structures and actually really build thriving communities on a local level with a higher degree of consciousness and a reconnection to nature. Now, we could compare and contrast different countercultures over time and different periods of change, but I think most people here would agree that we are entering into a period of real transition, and where we go from here is yet to be determined, but there are certainly underlying forces that are driving humanity in a certain direction, and many of us are rallying against that direction and seeking an alternative path, which really informs why this year's Campout is so important, because it's important to stress from the outset this isn't a music festival. This isn't a festival. It strictly meets the definition of an event. As Pete said, it's a community gathering. It's a grassroots community gathering. And the majority of people who are attracted to the Campout gathering are attracted because of the shared sense of concern about what is happening in the world for many of these different reasons. But the beautiful thing about that is people come to this event from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all political backgrounds, with a shared sense of frustration, but also a shared sense of hope and optimism for what could unfold when we come together. And as we talk about last year's event, we will really show and highlight how these types of community gathering really can be the stimulus and catalyst for the change we want to see in the world. So we're going to have a little potted history of Campout. I'll start by introducing last year's event. Pete kindly invited me to come and speak at last year's event following the work that I'd been doing over the last few years. But when we finally met, we realized we had so many strands and threads in common with our shared frustrations of the state of the world that Pete kindly invited Elevate, my brand, to come and curate one of the days at Campout 2022. So we had the pleasure of bringing together a selection of speakers and performers and facilitators on the Saturday. Some of the pictures you can see here from last year. So I had a real pleasure working alongside Pete in that experience. You can see a lovely picture of us both smiling and laughing there. Really a kind of brother from another mother in a way. We've got so many similarities, but our differences actually are what make us complementary in our styles. But we had an amazing time last year. So many laughs, tears of joy, tears of sadness, cathartic moments, conversations around the fire, breakthroughs, just so much, a rich experience. You can see there's so many pictures of nature and their wonderful food, music of all kinds, people coming together, beautiful smiling faces, lots of wonderful discussions, debates, discussions. And again, people from all walks of life and different backgrounds who don't necessarily see the world the same way. In the container of the event that Campout created, where we spoke about having initially an open mind and then an open heart, and then really coming back to really just being open as a human being to exploring new ideas and experiences. And we certainly created an opportunity for people to do that, not only around the campfire, but also across the various different event spaces that we had at last year's event in Ferndale Farm in Somerset. Pete, do you want to chime in on last year's experience before we move on to the wider history?
Sure, yeah. It was the first one we'd done, obviously, for 3 years with the break for the stuff that was going on in wider society. So it was, as you said, a real sense of catharsis and people realizing they weren't alone. They'd been through breaks with, a lot of people had been through breaks with friends and family. They'd found that their worldview conflicted with others. There was a lot going on they had to assimilate. So that for me is my overriding memory of that sense of relief, and that was brought out by a lot of the sessions that were done, and particularly some of the breath work that Yael Hockenberg did, which was incredibly moving, and it just released a lot for people. But it was that sense of reconnection, which is becoming one of our themes in one of the areas this year again, and that sense of co-creation. It's always about finding a balance, really. We'd done a Campout in 2018 where nothing was programmed at all. It was my first trial version of that, sort of prototype, and we had a blackboard with a load of blank spaces, and I invited everyone to, here it is in the middle, to fill in the blanks. And people were a little bit horrified when they turned up. So Pete's organised nothing for us. What are we going to do? But by the end of the weekend, we had some really creative sessions, and it was very fulfilling, and it gave everyone an opportunity to really step into that open space where the sparks fly, where the magic occurs. So this year we've got a balance, I'd say, between being tightly programmed and still some room for open space. We've had a lot of applications in online, and we've allocated a lot of those open spaces already to some of those incredibly fertile and creative ideas. So what you're seeing here, top left, was the very first Campout, Campfire Convention 001, as it was called, in the Black Mountains of Wales, which I can see from my shepherd's hut and caravan here out of the window. Brian Eno was our keynote speaker, along with Cilla Elworthy, the legendary peace campaigner. And Eno accepted our invitation to become a patron of Campfire, which was fantastic. So perhaps a little bit more politically themed then. We were riding the wave of Corbynism when it seemed there was a real opportunity to overturn the political system. But we all know what happened. Or many of us do anyway, from there. Top right is an Axbridge Campfire conversation. The following year, we were around the country doing events where I invited people to host them. Half of them I hadn't met before, so that was incredibly spontaneous and emergent. People who know me will know that the word emergent is popular in my lexicon. Bottom left is the Froome Campout 2019. A couple of hundred people attended that. An incredible event. I think all those big chill events I did over the years were almost trumped. Do I use that word lightly? Trumped by that Froome event, which was incredibly moving and powerful. That sense of the 5-day journey, 4 or 5-day journey, when you can really connect on a deep level with other people and form friendships, and themes emerge throughout the course of the event. So that's a sort of potted history. Last year was a continuation of that, and we're very excited about the Braziers Park possibilities for this summer.
Thank you, Pete. And I think it's clear that, you know, Campout has had that political history, and I'd say it does have a new political history, although I think right now we're looking at it from a very different lens of how we create transformation. In last year's event, one of the sessions we asked, you know, who feels politically homeless right now, and almost 90% of the room raised their hand. And the previous events may have come from a particular trajectory, the Elevate community is very politically diverse, and you know, we've been embracing within the winter gathering this sense of universality and this idea of wholeness. And you know, certainly there will definitely be differences amongst people's political views, but there's a shared sense of what can we do differently? How do we break through the impasse that we're experiencing, not just in the UK, but around the world? And, it's a time for political conversations, yes, but it's actually really a time for deeper conversations around how we actually create systemic change, and actually how we play a part in that, and how we create a new form of counterculture movement, how we bring a new set of human values and consciousness to what we're doing. And hopefully you'll see that through the pictures. It's a liberation, really. It's a series of happenings and liberations that bring people back to themselves and find many of the answers that people are seeking perhaps aren't outside of themselves, but rather inside of themselves. And when we find those answers, or those questions at least, we're going to start to apply them to the wider world. And that's how we start to really create change. So I have a firm belief that events like this, if you look through history, the 1960s I've referenced, there were many events, building up to the likes of the Woodstock festivals and such, that led to that kind of grand sweeping movement. And right now, I feel that Campout has the possibility to be one of those key stepping stones on the way over the years to come, to be an ignition of a possible new counterculture movement to challenge some of those key issues that I touched upon at the beginning of the conversation. So our event is built around some key principles. We co-created and designed these over the course of 3 days at our first planning event earlier this year, which we held at the Braziers Park event, where this year's event is taking place. I'll read through them because they're so important to us. They're integral to the event, and they're really an expression of what we're trying to create, not just within the course of this event, but actually to bring with us into the wider world. So I'll read through them, and we've played with the details and massaged words, and they're really still an evolving and working document, but I'll share them with you this evening. So universal inclusion, we want the idea that everyone is a VIP. We're breaking down the kind of performer participant relationship and realizing we all have a part to play, and that everyone is invited to participate within the event. We embrace diversity in all its form, including diversity of ideas and perspectives. We believe that by bringing together a wide range of perspectives and experiences, we can create a truly transformational and enriching environment. Number 2, active participation. We encourage active participation. We changed that from radical, by the way. It was radical participation initially, but radical conjures up a certain type of action, whereas actually active can encompass every degree of action, including radical where necessary. So we encourage active participation in all aspects of Campout, encouraging our attendees to co-create the experience with us and to contribute to the community in their own unique way. Bringing the gifts, bringing the experience you want to see at the event, bringing the energy you want to see at the event, bringing the conversation you want to experience at the event. Number 3, community building. We foster a sense of community and encourage connections through shared experiences, workshops, and activities that promote collaboration and co-creation. We believe that by working together, that anything is possible, and that includes the wider change we want to see in the world. Number 4, harmonious connection. Everything that we say can affect another soul. And if we constantly engage in battles in the world right now, it does feel like is in a social cultural battle, then we can become embattled ourselves. We've had many difficult conversations over the last couple of years, but this year we encourage you to choose love, become love itself at Campout. If you constantly give love, then you choose a different experience to the battles that we can find in the other realms. Number 5, self-expression. We celebrate artistic expression with creativity in all its forms, providing a platform for our performers and our participants to showcase their talents and inspire others to embrace their own self-expression, including finding the courage to speak out where necessary and finding your unique voice and your unique message for the world. Number 6, openness and curiosity. Our willingness to embrace new ideas determines our capacity for self-discovery and our personal growth. We invite you to rediscover your sense of awe and wonder by allowing yourself to be curious with an open mind, and the rest will unfold in beautiful and magical ways. Number 7, be here now. Our level of conscious awareness in any given moment determines the quality of our experience. So in a world full of chaos and distraction and division, we invite you to be here now at Campout, take a breath, and enjoy the gift of being fully present in the moment. I have a tendency to read at the speed of light, so I'll take my own principle and take a breath. It's probably our team are probably sick and tired of me saying that, but I go through these things so fast that we must remember to breathe. Create our own experience, create your own experience. We encourage our attendees to take responsibility for bringing the experience you wish to see at Campout. We invite you all to exercise personal responsibility for the conscious co-creation of an enriching experience for yourselves and others at Campout. That means we want you to bring your energy. We want you to bring your talents. Pete talked about the open spaces, which simply means, like you saw on the blackboard, you'll see an open slot where you can come and give a talk or a workshop or sing a set of songs or bust out some poetry, whatever feels right to you. We're creating that open space for you to find that and to carve out the opportunity for you to be part of it. But also it's about bringing the energy you want to see, the set of emotions you want to see, the set of conversations, even the food you want to see. It's a case of a real community effort to make this a magical experience. Number 9, this played out really well last year, random acts of kindness. We invite all participants to engage in random acts of kindness towards others throughout Campout with the intention of making someone else's experience more positive. Each small act of kindness can create a ripple effect that can impact the entire event and help to foster a culture of generosity, empathy, and mutual support. And you never know, those values might extend beyond the event and into the wider world if we carry some of these principles with us. So some beautiful stories last year where, in the opening circles in the morning where we gather as a community to share our reflections and our experiences on the event so far and frame what's coming up in the day. Some lovely stories where people have actually gone out and done that. It's just created a ripple effect and very beautiful to witness. Number 10, wait until you see the grounds, Braziers Park, this beautiful site we've got. So our ethos, borrowed slightly from Burning Man, is to leave it better than you found it. Many of the world's challenges are created as a result of us not making the decision every day to leave the world just a tiny little bit better than we found it. And we can talk about that physically, emotionally, mentally, but in this case, we're talking primarily about the physical surroundings, respecting the world that we live in, and inviting you to apply this at Campout and our beautiful surroundings. So as I mentioned, these are evolving. It's a challenge every day for us to embody these as in the creation of this event. In the rundown now, in the final 3 weeks, energy will be high. We'll be closing in on the final days, get everything ready for you. So our challenge is to live these values ourselves. But the invitation, while you're at Campout, is to experience some of these principles that form our ethos. And of course, number 11, have fun, importantly. The event, Campout, and life should be fun. So we invite you to leave some of the baggage at the door and bring a lightness into the event with you and have some fun. But the reality is, I say that partly in jest because there is a lot of heaviness in the world right now, and many of us are carrying some of that heaviness on our shoulders. And as Pete said, last year's event was very cathartic. There was a release for many of us, which can create the space then for more creative, more positive, more empowering thoughts and feelings and actions. So we really do mean have some fun, because it can shake things up a little for us as we release. So let's move on to talk about Campout 2023, this year's wonderful event. We've got 3 unique event spaces for you this year, which we shared over the course of the weekend in our latest announcement, plus a food village and a health and wellbeing village, which we'll also talk about. But tonight, I'm going to introduce you to some of the key themes. Here's some snapshots from our visits to the Braziers Park site. This is where the event is going to be taking place. In the top left, you can see one of our woodland stages. It's a beautiful, intimate spot where we'll be having our woodland stage, our open mic sessions, some great talks. I'll talk more about that in a bit more detail in a moment. But it's a great space. It's a secluded spot within the event site. There's a bar there. There's facilities. There's a wonderful little campfire. It's going to be a really intimate spot for some really great sessions. The middle picture at the top there is the vastness of the green field. This photo was taken on one of our sunnier visits. Our first visit was marred by fog and rain, but it really is a beautiful sun trap. It's a wonderful glowing space. And the top right there, you can see the Gothic Manor House, which is sat upon the grounds of this beautiful spot in South Oxfordshire. It's actually a working intentional community. For those of you interested in intentional communities, it's one of the most well-respected and sought-after intentional communities in the UK. There's live-in residents who are volunteers there. There's an educational facility there. And again, in alignment with our work, they themselves are experimenting with models of living and co-creation. It's fascinating that we've had an inside view on how they they work. Now, that's a private space. There are some rooms for rent there for those of you who don't want to camp. There's very limited rooms, and we've got word tonight that they may have actually all sold out. But if camping is your worst nightmare, there are some Airbnbs in the nearby area. But talking about getting out of our comfort zones, there may be an opportunity for you to do that by camping this year. In the bottom left-hand side there, the middle left-hand side there, you can see the roughage from a fire. There's a wonderful kind of amphitheatre, wooden amphitheatre around a central fire spot. This is going to be our main campfire. There's going to be some amazing conversations around there, and probably some experiences too over the course of the weekend. Maybe some a drum circle or some jam sessions or other forms of impromptu and spontaneous sessions around that space. In the middle section there, you can see our barn. Our barn is going to be part of our event setup for our core crew. We've got many different crew supporting the event. It was going to be one of our primary stages, but we decided we wanted to keep everything on the main site because it was slightly off the site. So that's a small detail that you don't really need to know, but it's a wonderful little space that our crew and event management team will work from. In the right-hand side, you can't see it, but that's the gateway in the middle right there. It's the gateway to our children's area. There's a children's playground in there. There's some wonderful activities for the children. And just outside of that space, there's a very flat, lovely, circular kind of spot in the grassy spot where we're going to have all manner of children's activities. And I was talking to Dr. Tess Laurie today. She's going to come along and read a wonderful set of stories to the kids there. There's going to be all kinds of experiences. Children from all ages, from toddlers. My boy Zach, our 2-year-old, will be there. But there'll be everything from babies right through to teenagers, and there'll be something for everyone. At the bottom left-hand side, you can see the outside of the barn. Random picture of a tree in the middle, bottom center section there. And the crazy looking space on the right-hand side at the bottom is the vortex. And I've got a close-up of that one in a minute, but that's one of our primary spaces, which I'll talk about in a moment. So I'm going to talk through the hub. So the hub, we don't have a picture of the hub, but there's going to be a big tent, our kind of central tent, our central hub. Within there, we'll have a stage and a bar and various other things. It's going to be beautifully decorated and well lit central space where we'll have our daily opening sessions. It's where we'll have our site-wide meditations. It's a space that we can all gather during the day, during meal times, etc. It's large enough to hold the entire event in the event of rain. So if you're thinking what happens if it rains, we've got plenty of cover, don't worry. But in the hub throughout the day, we'll be having a series of talks, breaking through collective trauma, talking about the heaviness of the world right now and how we can break through and let go of that and release that. Building a counterculture movement, how we take these wider issues and start to think about how we can build a loose movement that can challenge some of those things. A sort of a revolutionary period that's emerging out of what's happened in the last few years. We'll be looking at communication in a divided world and how we can start to reconnect and start to have difficult and challenging conversations in a really empowering and empathetic way. We'll be looking at health transformation and natural living as a form of medicine, breaking down the pharmaceutical industrial complex and looking at how we can live more lightly and more naturally in accordance with holistic and wholesome principles. We'll be hosting daily meditations to close out the day. There'll be fire ceremonies in the evening to light off the fire. There'll be drum circles and more. And then as we go into the evening, on all the spaces, you'll be have the opportunity to experience a whole range of music. And I'll hand over to Pete in a minute to talk about the different forms of music that we'll have across the site over the 4 days. So that crazy looking wooden structure was built by one of the festivals that's previously held on the site, the Supernormal Festival. It's a crazy looking structure, but it holds up to 100 people. It's incredibly well lit from those panels that you can see there on the top right hand side. And reconnection is the guiding theme for the Vortex. It's our well-being stage. It's our movement stage. There'll be all kinds of talks and practices, everything from yoga to qigong, breathwork, dance, and more. But the talks will focus on how we can reconnect to ourselves and our inner power. We'll be looking at how we can reconnect with others, where relationships have become fragmented, and how we can find a new level of intimacy with our loved ones. We'll be looking at how we can reconnect to our innate feminine and masculine energies. Again, within a very divisive world right now, important that we are able to reconnect with and ground ourselves in those energies. Reconnecting through technology. Technology can both constrain us and liberate us. We'll be looking at how we can evolve and look at technology for good and find a pathway to a more conscious use of technology. Be a very fascinating conversation to be part of. And then reconnecting to our voice. We've got an amazing, and allow Pete to talk about it, amazing opportunity to take part in a native chorus. There's going to be a series of opportunities to be part of a site-wide community song. Pete, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what Sarah Jewell's got planned on the Vortex?
Yeah, there'll be 2 sessions leading to her representation with a choir that's a scratch choir that evolves over the 3 days. And at Campout in 2019, she did the Rebel Chorus, which was incredibly moving and very popular and was part of the closing ceremony. So on this occasion, she's actually calling it a native chorus, and it's tapping into ancient wisdom and tribal wisdom from our elders and a whole vein of native connections, so that the songs will be carefully selected by her. And we'll be rehearsing those over 2-hour sessions on the Saturday and Sunday.
Thank you, Pete. Yeah, really looking forward to those. And then we have the Woodland stage, which you saw a moment ago, smaller, more intimate stage. There'll be a lovely little bar there and a great space where we'll be really the theme for the Woodland is finding our voice. And that, whether that's from spoken word, whether that's poetry, whether it's singing songs, whether it's jam sessions, but we'll be having some facilitated sessions as well across the course of the 3 days, finding our courage and confidence, exploring creativity, more tension release, non-violent communication, raising our consciousness, plus plenty of jam sessions. So if you've got an instrument, you've got a voice, come and gather around the fire. Plenty of opportunities to be part of the music in that wonderful space in a nice secluded part of the site. So, Pete, do you want to talk a little bit about the music that's going to occur across the course of the weekend?
Yeah, there'll be music really across 3 of the areas. The hub will have lunchtime live music, and the evening sessions will be a mix of DJs and live. So we've got a whole range across the 3 or 4 days, DJs including unveiled from West Wales, who is a family friend. I've known their family. They've been involved in the Axjet speakers, which are quite revolutionary, but Arwen has carved a particularly strong niche for her brand of electro, I guess, but she's very varied in a dance vein, but can also play fantastic chill out sets. So she'll have a big selection of stuff on hand. Bruce Bickerton, Elucid Nation, who some of you danced to till 4 a.m. I think last that won't be happening this year. We're really lucky to have Five Rhythms Conscious Dance DJ Christian D'Souza, who I only really was put in touch with a couple of weeks ago, but he'll be coming and doing a set in the Vortex on Saturday evening. Saturday evening, yeah. And he'll be followed by, we've got the Light Surgeons doing a session on Saturday, AV Outfit, who are world famous, really. Check out the Light Surgeons. And we've also got Stuart Warren Hill, who was a big chill headliner with Hexstatic, and his new project is called The New Viquenza, which he's going to give us an exclusive preview on the Friday. So he'll be along. He'll also be VJing with The Egg, who are quite well known on the festival circuit, on the Saturday night in the Vortex. We've got other performances from Nemo Jones, who was on the open mic sessions at Campout last year. Julia Palmer Price, who was one of the stars at the closing ceremony at Campout 2019. Bob Hillary, who some of you know from last year's event, and Peter Conway. You might want to say a word or two about Peter, Dan.
Yeah. So Peter's really an up-and-coming artist who's been playing music all through the last few years. He's written songs. He's one of the few artists who've really written songs about what's occurred over the last few years. And he's been touring these now within many of the kind of activist spaces across Europe. In fact, he's played all over Europe now. He brought some of his new songs to our event last year, and now, having played those for over a year now, he's bringing his latest tunes, kind of Bob Dylan-esque folk, beautiful voice, wonderful musician, and a deep creative soul, but really singing songs of our time. So we've got a real range of music. Pete, what I'll do now is I'll take us through each of the days. I've taken a snapshot directly from our work over the last few days in getting this coordinated with the timings. I'll stress timings are subject to change. Pete and I are talking on a daily basis, just finalizing the specific sessions, but we wanted to give you a real overview of what's coming. So the event begins on the 10th of August, and it's kind of site arrival day. Many people coming from all over the UK and further afield. Last year, we had people from Europe and the US come and join us, and we'll have the same again this year. So a very relaxed start to the day. All our food villages will be open for you, our health and wellbeing spaces. There'll be things like sauna. We possibly can have some ice baths. We're going to have massage and various other different treatments. You can start to unwind after your travels. We're going to have some yoga in the afternoon before our opening session. But we'll kick off the day with our formal welcome at 5 p.m. on the Thursday night, and then begin the evening with our first open site-wide meditation, followed by a community-wide dinner, event-wide dinner. And then Alexander Biner will be joining us to look at the big picture. He's recently written a wonderful book on the concept of big picture, looking at psychedelics and sense making and how we can make to piece together what's happening in the world. He's coming to join us on Thursday night. He's got some amazing material. He's going to have a very interactive session. There'll be laughter. There'll be connection with one another. It's going to be a really great session. And then Jessica Malik is going to light off the fire for us for our opening fire around the night. And I can imagine lots of amazing conversations around the fire that night. There's a chance that there'll be a few drinks flowing in the evening on Thursday night. We'll have a wonderful bar open for you. And as Pete mentioned, they'll in the Vortex really will be transformed into a musical space, and we'll be having all kinds of jam sessions around the Woodland stage. So there'll be opportunities for conversation, connection, getting yourself set up, having some wonderful food, getting grounded, getting settled on the event site, having a look around, orientating yourself, meeting people, and really getting excited for the weekend ahead. On Friday, we begin each day with the opportunity to join Yale, who has been a real hit of our gatherings. Yale has a trademarked dance flow into transformational breath. It truly is, in my experience, the most natural way to get energized to start your day. Sometimes, we all rely on a coffee once in a while. Well, take on Yale's session. It's a beautiful ride, and it really gets you focused and into your body for the day ahead. So really encourage that. We may also be having some Qigong and other practices in the morning before breakfast, but we've got Yale there for you every morning. We'll take breakfast every morning together and then start the event with an opening circle. The opening circle is an opportunity for us to set the scene for the day ahead, signpost you to what's coming up, and give you the opportunity to have your say, your reflections, your learns, your lessons, your feedback. It's a great site-wide opportunity to take part of the conversation. But then, as you can see across the three primary stages, we've got a full program for you across the central hub, which is kind of themed around resistance and rebuilding. We've got James Lavers for 90 minutes in the morning. He's going to be really talking about communication, how we can become more effective communicators, how we can become more empathetic communicators, but also how we can start to make sense of other people's communication in a world of kind of grand narratives and even deceit. How do we read the room, so to speak? How do we read whether someone is communicating authentically and truthfully? And how do we communicate more effectively? He's one of the most entertaining and wonderful humans I've ever had the privilege of spending time with, and he'll be with us to kick off Friday morning on the central hub. As Pete mentioned, over lunch we'll be taking live music, and then we've got returning Alan Kleinens from last year. He spent the last year studying collective trauma. He's been really looking at how we experience trauma throughout our lives, but how trauma is manifested within situations like we saw within COVID in the pandemic response, and how we carry that trauma. He's brought his entire year's worth of research into this space through new practices and his whole 30-40 career in personal transformation. He's really a highly sought after international speaker who'll be with us delivering a powerful 90-minute workshop on Friday afternoon. And then we're delighted to be joined by Tess Laurie, Dr. Tess Laurie, and the World Council for Health. They'll be delivering a session with multiple speakers on transformative health at both the individual and at the systemic level. So how we transform our individual health, but also how we start to transform the health of our societies. And we've already got a wonderful speaker as part of that panel called Sunita. She's an Ayurvedic medicine practitioner. She's a published author, highly sought after, and Tess and Co are coordinating the final details of that program as we speak. But Tess will also be giving us a talk to some of the children in the children's space, and they'll be having a stand to tell you a little bit about what they're doing right now. In the evening, we're delighted to be joined by Richard Vobes. Many of you will know Richard. His YouTube channel in recent months has really grown from strength to strength, some amazing conversations. He's going to lighten the tone and the mood in the evening with an entertaining and uplifting session on Friday night before we kick into some music in the main space there. Going on to the Vortex, our kind of healing and well-being space, we've got Nick Stone to give a really connected form of breath work. His work is, he's based down here in Bournemouth, not far from myself. He has a very gentle, relaxing form of breath work that really kind of will create the space of being really grounded. So whilst Yale's session in the morning will leave you feeling energized and connecting with your emotions and your body, Nick will kind of bring you into a very zen space, a very gentle space to step into the rest of the weekend. Sue Stone is going to come and give a talk on awakening abundance, talking about how we can create prosperity in times like this and create independence from the current systems. Sue is Nick's mum. Many of you may know Sue and Nick Stone. They've been very active for the last few years. And then we're joined by Leora Lightwoman in the afternoon to look at the joy of intimacy. And Jamie Cato hopefully will be able to confirm, but he's also looking at some shadow work and how we can confront our shadows. So again, the Vortex is about the inner journey, and in many ways, the tent is about the outer journey. And then in the evening, as Pete mentioned, we've got some amazing musical sessions for you. Now on our Woodland stage, we've got a very different form of trauma release in the morning. So you've got a whole set of variety across these multiple spaces. We've got a big open space session in the afternoon that you can participate in the Woodland space. And you can also see our Wellbeing Village has got open spaces that you can come and schedule a talk or a workshop. And then we've got Jane Gunn on a session bringing the courage to speak up, finding your voice and how to communicate clearly and effectively and find your true message, followed by music in the wood, all across all three spaces on Friday evening. On Saturday, again, across the three spaces, we've got an introduction to the financial reset and cryptocurrency with Sam X. He's the co-host of the Uncharted Territory podcast with myself. We originally met at a introduction talk just like this one. It was a packed house. We hosted a introductory event on the Elevate platform and had over 500 people register just for that opening talk. We expect that one to be a very busy session, but looking at the financial changes and the changes in the financial landscape and how we can take full control of our own destiny, safeguard our assets, and look at ways to protect against what's changing in the financial landscape right now. But also for those of you interested in cryptocurrency and finding out more, he's there to really kind of introduce you to some of those key areas. In the afternoon, we've got David Sherrill-Lambos. Some of you may or may not know David Sherrill-Lambos. He's the founder of Reaching People. He's done some amazing work over the last 3 years in helping people to navigate very difficult conversations. He's been integral in helping people to he's been very integral in the activist movement, certainly the last few years, and helping people to communicate more effectively, really bringing the conversation to a conversational level. But he's going to be combining his work on communication and the behavioral aspects on this year's event to really creating internal shifts that enable us to find more ease within ourselves, so that when we are communicating with others, we don't become triggered so easily, and we don't play out our past patterns that may be holding us back. So it's going to be a fascinating session with David. Then we're joined by Dr. Rob Verkerk on Friday afternoon. He's going to have a very powerful workshop looking at life medicine and how we transform our health and what it means to be healthy from the ground up. Rob is the founder of the Alliance for Natural Health, one of the most respected natural health experts in the world. His company is runs events and conferences all over the world, and head office in the UK and the US. We're going to have Rob with us for a full 90 minutes on Friday afternoon. And then we're going to have a drum circle on Friday evening with Wendy, who's part of our team. So right after dinner, you have the opportunity to take part in our site-wide drum circle, and then again, music from Pan Electric and Bruce Bickerton. And yeah, last year's session was iconic. People were up to 4 a.m. dancing. The music will be shut off a little earlier this time. We've got different site rules, but you can carry on dancing if you wish. Saturday morning, we've got the introduction to Sarah Jewell's native chorus that Pete talked about. And we're joined by Jessica Malik to talk about why inner work is important. It's kind of what Sam is offering as an introduction to the financial reset. Jessica is offering an introduction to what inner work is and its importance and the different modalities and practices that are available to us. Then we've got a really fascinating session on sacred sexuality, reconnecting to our innate masculine and feminine energies. That's a panel session. We've got 3 different speakers, facilitators joining us for that one. That'll be one of the most lively sessions of the weekend, I think, and really looking forward to seeing what comes of that one. And then we've got a big 2-hour session with Sarah. For those of you who want to get your singing voices out, you can join the native chorus. It's our first set of rehearsals before we have the site-wide meditation facilitated by Melanie Aldridge, who's one of the most profound meditation facilitators I've ever come across. She'll be leading us through a 30-minute deep session. All of this stuff is optional. You know, if you don't want to meditate, you don't have to, but it'll be there available to you to close out the day following our discussions and topics during the day. It's a way to release and get ready for the food in the evening and the dance opportunities to get out, get involved with the music. The Woodland stage, we've got conversations on nonviolent communication. We've got Marcy Locke from the United States coming in to do a session on transforming our consciousness. She's literally here for a few days, and we have the opportunity to bring her to our session with us. We'll be sharing more about her work in the coming days. Matt Coldrick, an incredible human being that's done some amazing work on creativity. The specific nature of the Tlak process that he's talking about is a bit of a mystery to me, but it's all in the vein of finding our creativity. And then we've got open spaces and open mic sessions and jam sessions in the evening on the Woodland stage, and of course other open sessions on the Wellbeing Village. We've got some dream work with Tamara, who's one of the long-standing community members within the Campfire Network. She was with us at Campout last year. Nick Dockett is doing a group hypnotherapy session, and there'll be all manner of other sessions in the Wellbeing Village across the day that you can participate in, and you can also bring your own sessions to the program. And lastly, on the final day, again, the opportunity to take part in Yale's unique morning activity. And again, you might think it's the same every morning. Trust me, having done it repeatedly, it brings up different things every single time. It brought me to tears at the last gathering. It was just a deeply emotive and powerful experience. I can't even describe it, but leaves you feeling really invigorated for the day ahead. And many of you I know would have been part of the Stand in the Parks over the last few years in your local areas. We're delighted to have the team from the Stand in the Park coming to lead a session with us at Campout this year. We'll have a site-wide Stand in the Park as part of our morning circle session. They'll be giving a short talk about what the Stand in the Park has achieved and leading us off into a session. It'll be a really good opportunity to meet other people. Stand in the Park has been a real sane place for people to have conversations in a world where difficult conversations have been almost impossible to have. So the Stand in the Park will give you that opportunity to share your stories and your experiences across the weekend and make some new friends. Now, turning our attention on the main stage on Sunday morning, we're really focusing on the main stage about how we create change. So in the morning, we have a 90-minute multi-speaker panel session on creating systemic change. We've got this is where the resist and rebuild part really comes alive. We've got activists coming to talk with us, but we've also got people who are engaging in some amazing change-making work, from transforming food systems to looking at alternative media. It's a really great blend of speakers who are helping us to address the question, how do we spend our time? Do we resist the old, or do we build the new? And be a fascinating discussion with some really brilliant examples. Now, we've got a big open space in the afternoon right now, TBC. We've got a couple of irons in the fire for our kind of closing speaker. So watch this space on that one, but watch out for some further announcements. We're likely to bring that one in over the next couple of days. And the event closes a little earlier on Sunday to give people the opportunity to travel if they've got a long way to go. But we'll have our final closing session, our closing ceremony, our group singing the chorus, and various other practices that will come through to really close out in a very beautiful way this year's event. And then in the evening, once again, we've got dinner together and we've got more music. Peter Conway will be playing his set on Sunday evening, and we may be joined by Jodie Abacus. Again, Jodie's been very active the last few years, but we're in discussion with Jodie and other musicians for Sunday night. And then in the Vortex, We've got a focusing session in the morning. If you've never heard of focusing, it's a very embodied somatic process. It's a very powerful process. Again, last year, the focusing session was one of the highlights for many people. And then we've got Sarah's closing chorus leading into the closing session. And then finally, on the Woodland stage, we've got Shire Freeman. Most people may know Shire as Lazo Freeman, former bodybuilder who turned bodybuilder turned spiritual warrior, bringing his conscious work. He's toured the world, living in different communities, learning different practices and native wisdom. He's bringing everything he's learned to Campout this year. He'll also be singing some songs around the fire. We've got Batahan Bintas, who's coming to us to talk about the evolution of consciousness and the rise of cyberculture. This is where we really look at how technology intersects with the world that we're in right now and its ability to liberate or constrain. Fascinating speaker. He'll also be bringing his virtual mushroom experience. So for those of you interested in plant medicine and psychedelics, but have never sampled such plant-based experiences, Batahan has created a virtual headset experience where you can indulge in a psychedelic type experience. He'll be having sessions across the weekend, but he'll be introducing that also within his session. And then finally, Leora Lightwoman is bringing her Soil Sentiments workshop, which is about really how we reconnect with the land. Again, a very beautiful way to ground ourselves as we close out the weekend. Again, some big hits coming in the evening. We've got Charles Eisenstein joining us for a short session remotely. He can't join us right now in person. He'll be joining us remotely on our big screen in the Vortex for a live session and Q&A. And then we'll be joined by Robin Minotti, for many of you may know from his Telegram group. It's one of the most active Telegram groups over the last few years. He's released a film and we'll be having a film screening on the screen on the closing night. And again, the opportunity to take part in the campfire jam. And then across all of the weekend at the Wellbeing Village, lots of activities for you and loads of opportunities to bring your gifts to this year's event. So as you can see, it's a packed program. It probably doesn't do it justice in terms of the open space that will be available to you. But you can expect impromptu things happening in the field, from yoga sessions to workshops and all kinds of other open space activities. So when you join us on the site, you'll be able to come and register for those open sessions. There'll be a blackboard like you saw from Pete's previous event where you can go and lodge up your session, and we'll be talking about those in the morning circles and the evening closeout so that people know about what you've got going up. So if you'd like to give a talk, you'd like to give deliver a session, then do come along. You will have the opportunity to do so within our open spaces. So as you can see, a very varied program. But if we go full circle to where we began tonight's conversation, looking at personal empowerment, community building, localization and decentralization, a key part of the conversations we'll be having around systemic change in the financial system and the health system and the media. We'll be looking at all of the different aspects that we talked about throughout the core themes. It's going to be a really varied program, and there'll be plenty of opportunity for you to connect and share stories across the weekend. So it's a very liberating experience. It'll be a very uplifting experience. We've got some amazing feedback from last year's event, and we're building on it this year. So if you're watching this now live, or you're with us in the Zoom room and you're interested about how to get your ticket for this year's event, you can get your tickets at campout.live. They're available right now. When you book your ticket, you have the opportunity to book a car parking space if you're coming in a vehicle. If you're coming in a live-in vehicle like a camper van, you can also book a space for your camper. It's not a powered site. It doesn't come with a hookup, but there'll be plenty of facilities for you to support your camping on site. We're looking at potentially having a shop for supplies on site. We're in discussions with a local provider on that. Children are welcome of all ages. We'll have a specific children's area. There's a play space. There'll be activities. They'll be well looked after. We'll be having professionals on site to support our volunteers on looking after the children. So it's an experience for all ages, people from all backgrounds. But generally, if you are concerned about the state of the world we're in right now and you want to find a way to make a difference, then this, in my view, is one of those events that is a must attend to be part of the conversation, be part of the change you wish to see. So yeah, go ahead and book your tickets at campout.live. and we'll open up for questions within our community now. So I'm sure we've covered a lot there. There's a pat. You can see we've been working very hard behind the scenes to pull it all together for you. It's taking place in just a few weeks' time, from the 10th to the 13th of August at Braziers Park in South Oxfordshire. It's well connected by bus. There's a railway station at both Reading and Oxfordshire, Oxford Central, and there's a direct bus route from both of those stations to virtually the front door of the Campout site. So it's well connected by road, rail, and public transport. And for those of you coming from overseas, the nearest airport is Heathrow. And again, there's regular train services into those key spaces where you can also get a bus in. We encourage car sharing. There'll be a lift sharing site on both the Elevate and the Campfire communities. But it's going to be a wonderful 4 days. For those of you who just have come back from Russell Brand's event, this weekend, the community event, and looking to build the momentum on what you've just experienced, then Campout will be a really great continuation for you. And if you've been looking to go to an event like that, where there's a group of open-minded, open-hearted people who are exploring these kind of critical issues of the world and looking at the intersection between personal transformation and social change, then Campout is the event for you. So very excited to invite you to be with us at this year's event. And we're now open up for Q&A within our call here. So thank you for listening to our presentation. As I mentioned, I've broken all the rules of what makes an effective presentation. Far too many slides, far too many words, far too much narrative. So I'm going to hand over the mic to Pete briefly for any closing thoughts and summary on this year's event, and then we'll give you the opportunity to ask your questions about this year's event.
Thanks, Dan. I think you covered it fairly well, really. Just to say, I've been working hard on the actual programme, which will be around 60 pages PDF, which we are aiming to have for this coming weekend. So we hope we'll stick with that deadline. And that will be available to download from the site. I think there's a revamp coming to the campout.live, a few things being added in the next day or so. You'll also find a potted history of Campout on there and FAQs with other details about logistics on the site.
Yes, thank you, Pete. One of the most common questions we get is around accessibility. It is accessibility friendly. It's not the easiest site to navigate with a wheelchair, but it certainly is possible, and there'll be a map that will show you. So don't let that deter you. There's toilets surrounding the entire campsite. There's open showers. There's some wonderful showers. The showers are just incredible. Even those who are staying in the manor house last time would go out to the campsite to go on the outdoor showers because they were so invigorating and so warm.
And brilliant compost loos as well.
So you're well taken care of. There's going to be some amazing selections of food, just a wonderful self-contained space for the 3 or 4 days that you are with us. Cool. So I'm going to end the live stream now. Thank you to everyone who's watched the live stream. In order to I haven't expressly got permission from our attendees to the Zoom room to show their faces. So I'm going to kindly say goodnight to our people watching live. Please share the broadcast, and I hope to see you at Campout this year. Go to campout.live, check out the ticket link there. The website will be updated in the next couple of days with the program. It'll be fully revamped. But you can get your tickets today to secure your place at this year's event. Tickets are limited. We have a maximum capacity on site of 500 people. That includes our performers and our crew. So please do make sure you get your ticket early to avoid missing out. We anticipate selling out over the coming weeks. So please do make sure if you're planning to get it in the diary, don't wait. We don't want you to miss out on this amazing event. All right. So thank you. Good night to everyone at home. Now we're going to come back into our Zoom room and take the questions.